Hello fellow humans, on your way to the stars, I'm Jean-Michel Grosjeu and we are here together to learn the rules of High Frontier for All, Module 1, Terawatt and Futures. If you don't know what this is all about, or if you don't feel comfortable with the core rule of High Frontier for All, I invite you to watch my series of 3 videos about these core rules. You'll need them to understand what follows. Okay. That being said, let's dive straight into this Module 1, again by Phil Eklund and Jeffrey Chamberlain, published by Sierra Madre Games. This module adds 4 new sections to High Frontier. Freighters, some heavy carriers made for industrial transport from planet to planet. New Gigawatt and Terawatt thrusters, far more powerful than regular thrusters, essential for very long trips to the far reaches of our solar system. Then space elevators, a very convenient device to move heavy loads from a planet's surface to its low orbit. And finally, futures that are new goals for victory, epic and grandiose, and that bring a new depth to this game. And yet, I have to take a break because even if futures are in the very title of this Module 1, it requires Module 2 to be playable. So, I decided to wait until my next video about Module 2 to introduce rules about futures. That being said, let's start with freighters. There are 7 freighter cards, only 7, they constitute a new deck in the market, and players can buy freighters, like any other card, with the research operation. The player who wins the auction takes the top card in his hand, but because freighters are black cards, you cannot simply boost them to LEO with the boost operation. As with any other black card, you must build your freighter with a nitty production operation, and so you need a factory on a site with the matching letter. Of the 7 cards, 3 bear the letter V, so they can be built only on V-sites factories. The other 4 ones can be built on any site's factory. When a freighter is built, its card goes to an outpost or even into a rocket as any other card. But in addition to that, a freighter can be built as its own stack. Module 1 adds a 5th stack to the game. After LEO, rocket and 2 outposts, here comes the freighter stack. And as the rocket stack is embodied by a rocket pawn, and both outpost stacks are shown on the map as outpost tokens, the freighter stack is a large cube on the map. It looks like an oversized factory, so here on Peking, for example, a small piece of rock close to Vesta, a freighter was built on this V-sides factory, so a large cube is added to show that the freighter card is now in the freighter stack. And I can hear you thinking, oh, but this big freighter cube looks a lot like a factory. Don't worry, as we will see very soon, it's not a problem, it's even done on purpose. A player can only have 1 freighter card, in hand or in stack. If you already have a freighter card, you cannot bid on an auction for another freighter card. If you own a freighter card and would like to buy another one, you can still discard it as a free action back to the bottom of its deck. Or you can sell it with the free market operation, but only if it is a freighter with the letter V, and so its cost is the market value for letter V. A freighter with no letter, the any type, cannot be sold because it has no market value. Okay, and let's see now how to use a freighter. Let's see what a freighter is made for. A freighter is a heavy space carrier that transports things, so cards, through space. It's like a new rocket, but a far simpler one. A freighter has a transport capacity, that is, the maximum mass it can hold as cargo. Here, for example, our freighter can transport this robonaut, this radiator, and this reactor because their total mass is 4 for a load limit of 4. Note that the freighter's own mass does not count against this limit. The freighter doesn't have to carry itself. The freighter's own mass is used only if the freighter's card is inside a rocket stack, for example, so when it is carried by a rocket as cargo itself. Transported items are kept in the freighter stack, and so, as you see, a freighter stack works exactly like a rocket stack. Some freighters show the words factory loading only. So, as you guess, that means that you can transfer cards into this freighter stack as a cargo transfer free action only if there's a friendly factory on the site. However, such freighters can unload everywhere. Then, freighter as a big cube on the map moves like a rocket, a heavy and very simple rocket. First, a freighter has no fuel strip. It has no fuel strip because it doesn't use fuel at all. When you move your freighter, you can do one burn per turn, and that's all. Still, it can land and lift off on size 1 sites. A standard rocket with a net thrust of 1 could only land and lift off on size 0 sites. But freighters can go to size 1 sites. This is an exception. Now back to our previous example. Green player just built a freighter with ET production on Peking. Site size is 1, so a powered liftoff is possible. On his turn, green player can move his freighter big cube. On the first pink dot, it spends its one available burn, but it can go on as long as it doesn't need any more burn. And so, as you see, freighters can carry cards from a site to another. It's very convenient, in particular when you produce black cards on several factories and want to put all these pieces together for assembly. Every turn, each player gets one possible movement, but one for his rocket and one for his freighter, one movement per moving token. Okay, in our example, the freighter was lifting off from a size 1 site. But usually you'll build your freighter on sites larger than that. And then problems will start to arise. Let's take this first example. A green player builds his freighter with an ET production operation on Belinda. But because Belinda is a size 2 site, the freighter cannot lift off by itself. Still, it can try a factory-assisted liftoff because there is no lander burn. Every factory-assisted liftoff requires a hazard roll. Here, our freighter rolls a 1 and is destroyed during the maneuver. Green player will have to build it again next turn. Okay, a factory-assisted liftoff is always a dangerous maneuver, but in some cases, even this is not possible. Here, green player builds his freighter on a large site, size 10, and because this site has a lander burn, a factory-assisted liftoff is not possible. A freighter can lift off from such a large site only with a settling liftoff if there is an atmosphere. And so, what do you do if none of the 3 liftoff methods are possible? No other solution but to bring a rocket with enough thrust to carry your freighter as cargo up to deep space where it will become operational again. Fine, I took my time with these examples to be sure you understand that a freighter is a convenient tool to move your stuff, but, as usual in High Frontier for All, it requires some skill before it becomes the space carrier of your dreams. And now let's see in more depth how a freighter moves. 1 burn per turn, net thrust 1. As we just saw, it can benefit from factory-assisted landing and liftoff. Also, acetylene liftoff or aerobrakes landing are okay when possible. If you own the PowerSat capability, you can use it to push your freighter for 1 more thrust. And freighters, of course, can benefit from planetary flyby bonus thrust. Freighters suffer from hazards as any rocket, but they have a thick hull that protects their cargo. So, in case of solar flares or radiation belt, the freighter itself must roll with its own rad-hard capacity, but if a card in the freighter stack misses its belt or flare roll, it is not decommissioned. Instead, a glitch token is put on the stack and nothing if there's already a glitch token. Okay, Freighters are very convenient and they are even essential because, brace yourself, the delivery operation no longer exists as of Module 1. If you choose to play with Module 1, you cannot use the delivery operation anymore to move black cards back to low Earth orbit. Every time you produce a black card with ET production, and if you want to move this card anywhere else, you must carry it with a rocket or a freighter. And that's only the first step, because with the freighter card you will be able to go further in the tech tree. Freighters are always black cards, but they have another side, and this side is purple. And in order to change a black card into a purple card, you need the promote operation. Very simple. For this operation, you must have your freighter black card on a colony, a dome of your color. And this colony must fulfill the criterion shown on the freighter card. This criterion looks like a small dome. Here, the criterion is that the colony must be on a site with the push icon. If it's okay, the player simply flips his card to its purple side. And voila, your freighter is now technically enhanced. It's as simple as that. Other colony criteria are possible: a given site letter, or an atmosphere symbol, or submarine or astrobiology symbol. And so you know what you have to do: find a site with the right symbol, claim it, build a factory on it, then a colony, then bring your freighter cube up to there, and voila, you flip it to purple side with the promote operation. Note that you can use a colony from another player as long as he agrees after, for example, some juicy negotiation. So there are now 3 levels in High Frontier for All's technological hierarchy. Wildcards are in your hand from the moment you bought them with the research operation. You turn them into real items in low Earth orbit with the boost operation. If you want to build a card on its black side, you must use ET production operation and build it on a factory bearing the matching letter. A purple item is never produced directly from your hand. You must first build the card on its other side, white or black. Then, move this card, this item, to a colony of the matching type. Then, use the promote operation to flip it to its purple side. With the free market operation, you can sell any white card in your hand for 3 aquas. You sell from your hand, so you sell an ID, a patent. With that same free market operation, you can sell a black card item in low Earth orbit for its market value depending on its letter. In this case, you sell an item, not an ID. You did build the black item before selling it. But still, you can also sell a black card directly from your hand for 3 aquas. And you cannot sell a purple item. And now that things are crystal clear, let's see what you get when you promote your freighter to its purple side. You get a freighter fleet. That means that all your cubes, small and big, your factories and your freighter, they all become mobile factories. And so, from that point on, your small cubes can move just as your big freighter cube. Every turn you can move your rocket and each of your factories on the map, and that includes your freighter. Because all cubes now belong to the freighter fleet, they all get the same properties as on the freighter card. They get its mass. That means that you can carry a factory inside a rocket or inside your freighter stack, the big cube. They get its radiation hardness when going through radiation belts or undergoing solar flares. The load limit only relates to the big cube. In a freighter fleet, all cubes are equal, but there's only one freighter stack and it is embodied on the map by the big cube. There is no card stack for other factories, the small cubes. The big cube has its own stack and can carry things through space. The small cubes can just move by themselves alone, but still it's a huge improvement. All mobile factories inherit special capabilities from freighter card. including any bonus pivot depicted by small ballerinas. A mobile factory can even perform auto-assisted landing or liftoff, that is, they can assist their own landing or liftoff. A cube, small or big, can act as a factory when it is on a claimed site, that is, on a site with a disk of the same color. Here, this cube can do a factory-assisted landing because it can act as a factory thanks to the green disk and auto-assists its own landing. Once on the site, it can perform all factory operations, refuel or ET production. Note that once your freighter card is flipped on its purple side, the freighter fleet side, even the big cube can perform factory operations, refuel and ET production, as long as it is on a claimed site. This other mobile factory cannot land at all on this site because, without claim disk, it cannot use factory-assisted landing. It could have landed by itself only on a size 1 site. It could even have been assisted by another player's factory after negotiation. In such a case, it is put besides and cannot use factory operations because the claim disk is not of the right color. If one of your factories leaves its site, don't forget to adjust market values accordingly. So, inside the freighter fleet, you can see all your cubes, big and small, as a large family, a fleet of mobile factories. They just have one freighter stack they can share to carry things, to carry cards. Only one freighter stack for all your factories. And this freighter stack is shown on the map by your big cube token. At any moment, if you want another mobile factory to become capable of carrying cards, there's a free action that can swap cubes on the map. That is the big cube swap action. This one is very easy. You just swap your freighter's big cube with any one of your factory's small cube on the map. Nothing really moves in the process. You just take away from the big cube the power to have a freighter stack and give it to another factory. This swap is possible only if the stack is currently empty. And now it's time to go on with this module 1 next big topic, Gigawatt Thrusters. Gigawatt Thrusters are a new kind of cards, but as you will see, their use is very similar to freighter cards. There are 7 of them. These cards are black. They can be bought from their own deck by a research operation. And because they are black, they cannot simply be built into LEO by a boost operation. No, they must be built instead with the ET production operation with a factory on a site with the matching letter. A player can own only one gigawatt thruster card, either in his hand or in play in a stack. You cannot buy a gigawatt thruster with a research operation if you already have one. But you can always decommission a gigawatt thruster if you want to buy another one. A gigawatt thruster is a thruster. It has a thruster triangle and usually a very efficient one. Look at this, a base thrust of 12 with a fuel consumption of 1/3. That's awesome. Gigawatt thrusters are made to take you to the worst remote corners of the solar system. Like regular thrusters, it needs other cards as support chain, but these cards never modify its thrust triangle. For example here, this gigawatt thruster would still have a thrust of 12 and a fuel consumption of 1/3. It is not modified by its reactor values. But still, it needs its support chain, it must carry it along. Okay, isn't that wonderful? Let's buy one immediately and never use a regular thruster again. No? In fact, there's a huge limitation to gigawatt thrusters. Their thrust triangle is yellow, and that means that they only work with isotope fuel. Isotope fuel is shown as yellow beads instead of the regular blue ones. These beads can only be produced by factories with the refuel operation. As you remember, with this operation, a factory can produce 7 regular fuel blue beads. So, Instead of that, player can choose to produce isotope fuel, but only one yellow bead. Isotope fuel is always produced one bead per turn. And wait, there is more. The letter on the Gigawatt thruster card gives the type of the sites where this thruster can be ET produced. Okay, but it is also the type of the isotope it uses. That means that yellow beads for this Gigawatt thruster can only be produced by factories on sites with that same letter. Now, you understand how difficult it is to operate such a thruster. As soon as a player builds a Gigawatt thruster, it can start to produce isotope fuel, and the letter on his Gigawatt thruster card is the type of his isotope beads for the rest of the game. That being said, from then, it's quite easy. Inside the rocket, isotope fuel is shown with the yellow wet counter. And it works exactly as regular blue fuel, the only rule being that you need yellow fuel for yellow thrust triangle. As you remember, we already had two types of fuel, blue liquid fuel for blue thrust triangles and gray dirt fuel for gray thrust triangles. Now we add yellow isotope fuel, and it is the highest one in the fuel hierarchy. That means that you can always downgrade yellow fuel to blue fuel, for example, and use it with the blue thrust triangle. Of course, you can never upgrade fuel. Gray fuel can never be used as blue, and blue fuel never as yellow. If a player loses his Gigawatt thruster card by decommission, he cannot own isotope fuel anymore. Isotope fuel is always linked to a Gigawatt thruster card. So, in such a case, all yellow fuel this player owns is immediately turned into regular blue fuel. And that's it for Gigawatt thruster. Just a few more things before we go on. First, you remember that thrusters are often capable of afterburn. This is the orange flame on top of the thrust triangle. Afterburn always gives one thrust bonus and only one. The number in the orange flame is the fuel cost. On a Gigawatt thruster, afterburn doesn't work the same. In fact, it's even the opposite. The fuel cost is always one isotope, one yellow bead. And the number in the orange flame is the thrust bonus. So, Gigawatt afterburn is far more efficient than regular afterburn. Look at this yellow thrust triangle. With a base thrust of 2 and an afterburn of 5, that gives a net thrust of 7 with only 1/10 of fuel consumed per burn. Imagine how far you can go with such a rocket. And don't forget, the use of afterburn always produces one thermometer if your engine requires some extra cooling. It can be a useful trick. And finally, any Gigawatt thruster can be promoted with the same promote operation we used with freighters. So, for example, with this Gigawatt thruster, you need to move the black card as cargo or as an actual rocket thruster to a D site with a colony. That's what this dome symbol means. Then the result of this promote operation is to flip the card to its purple side. Our Gigawatt thruster just became a Terawatt thruster. A Terawatt thruster is nothing else than a more powerful version of its Gigawatt side. No special rules, it works exactly the same. Just one thing, a rocket powered by a Terawatt thruster can go to a synodic comet, whatever the season. Synodic comets are sites with a colored border. These sites usually are only accessible during the right colored season. With the Terawatt thruster, you can go there whenever you want. A Terawatt thruster also gives new goals and new victory conditions as a special blue text. This is called the future. And as I told you at the beginning of this video, we will not see these rules until next video about Module 2. Now there's one last technological gimmick to see, space elevators. Space elevators are special structures already printed on the map. You cannot build space elevators wherever you want. There are special locations to do that. A space elevator is a transportation tool that facilitates cargo transfer from a heavy planet with a strong gravity to a lighter site from where it will be easier to pick up your stuff. Here on Mars, the space elevator goes from a size 10 site to a small size 1 satellite. On the Moon, the elevator goes from a size 9 site to a Lagrange point, a simple orbit around the Moon, not even a site. At the beginning of the game, no space elevators actually exist. The symbols on the map are just possible locations to build elevators. Usually, what happens is that you have a factory on a heavy site. For example, your yellow rocket flies to Mars orbit, then it lands using aerobrakes, thanks to Mars atmosphere. Then you claim the site with the prospection operation. Next turn, you build a factory, and now you can produce black cars at your factory with ET production, but with a gravity of 10, it is very difficult to bring your production out of Mars, and here is where a space elevator can be useful. There is a space elevator symbol between Mars Archiamon's site and Phobos, a Mars satellite. For this elevator to be operational, a player must build it. Building an elevator is an operation. On one end of the elevator symbol, you must have a factory, an operational factory, a cube on a disk. On the other end, you must have a cube. Any kind of cube, it can be a factory, but usually you just have to bring there a freighter or a mobile factory. For example, yellow player landed his freighter on Phobos. Remember, a freighter can freely perform a powered landing on any size 1 site. And then the elevator building operation by itself requires a hazard roll. On a result of 1, the operation fails and the cube is destroyed. Here, yellow freighter would be decommissioned. You can avoid this hazard roll by paying 4 aquas for FINAO. Failure is not an option. Let's suppose yellow player passes his roll, so he puts a generic grey wooden stick to show that this elevator now actually exists. As soon as the elevator is built, the player automatically gains the ownership of both ends of it. He puts a disk to show that, even on a previously busted site with a red disk. So, an operational space elevator is a space elevator location where an elevator building operation succeeded. This is shown by the small wooden stick. From then, the space elevator stays operational as long as there's a factory on either end. As soon as the factory is destroyed or leaves the site, the wooden stick is removed and the elevator no longer exists. As a user of the elevator, the player can transfer any cargo from one end of the elevator to the other end. This is a cargo transfer, so this is a free action, and it's just as if both ends of the elevator were on the same location. Back to our example with an operational elevator, yellow player can freely transfer his newly produced black card to its freighter, and even he can transfer his rocket's card through the elevator to reassemble his rocket on Phobos and lift off from there much easily. You can transfer all cards through an elevator, you can even transfer your crew card, you can also transfer fuel beads. And voila, you know how to build an elevator, you know how to use it, and elevators also earn you victory points. When computing factory victory points at the end of the game, any factory linked to a space elevator has its market value doubled. And here you are, ready to play with Module 1. In fact, this module is seldom played without the following one, Module 2, Colonization. Modules 1 and 2 really comes hand by hand, and I strongly suggest you quickly take a look at my following video to at last enjoy the delights of Pannels, Colonists and Futures.